I never considered myself beautiful, not in the way magazines sold it, not in the way my high school yearbook classified it with superlatives like best smile or most likely to marry rich. I had a wide nose that tilted a little to the left, acne scars from years of failed skincare routines, and hair so stubborn it seemed to have its own mood swings. I wasn't the girl who turned heads when she walked into a room. I was the girl who held the door open for them. Still, I found my lane and drove in it. I focused on things that didn't require a symmetrical face or flawless skin. Work ethic, consistency, loyalty. In the bustling offices of Denhart Advertising, I was a ghost in a blazer. Always there, never flashy. But reliable? Absolutely. 5 years I gave that company. 5 birthdays remembered, countless late nights, dozens of client emergencies averted like mini PR hurricanes. I knew the vending machine code for everyone's favorite snack. I kept spare charger cables in my drawer. I was the woman who made everything easier, smoother, more efficient. Then came Nathan Blake. He didn't walk into Denhart so much as glide. Tall, square-jawed, always in suits that hugged him like they'd been stitched mid-stride. He had an accent he never explained, but used just enough to sound interesting. He flashed smiles that seemed calculated, rehearsed. My coworkers were obsessed from day one. The HR team practically built him a throne. Every department sent fruit baskets to his office. Even the interns fought over who got to deliver his coffee. I watched quietly. Not jealous, just cautious. There was something too slick about him, like a marketing pitch without substance. A man like that doesn't take over a company unless he plans to flip it upside down. A month into his reign, I was summoned to his office. No explanation. Just a calendar ping that read, Meeting Blake, 9 a.m. sharp. I arrived early, as usual. He let me stand outside his glass-walled office for 5 minutes before waving me in with one raised eyebrow, like I was interrupting something important. Eliza, he said, not looking up from his laptop. Take a seat. I sat. He finally looked at me, his eyes scanning my face like he was evaluating a menu item he hadn't ordered. You've been with us how long now? 5 years last month. Loyalty, that's rare these days, he said, leaning back in his chair like he was preparing to deliver a TED Talk. But I have to be honest with you. Denhart is entering a new era. We're modernizing, new branding, new clients, sleek visuals, that kind of thing. My brow furrowed. I'm not sure I follow. He gave me a smile that was half apology, half performance. You've done great work, Eliza, truly. But, well, we're shifting our front-facing image, our brand identity. I blinked. You're firing me? He didn't say the word. Cowards rarely do. I just think you'd be more comfortable in a different environment. Something quieter, less visible. It took me a moment to understand. You're firing me because of how I look. He straightened in his chair. No one said that. You didn't have to. He offered a weak chuckle. This isn't personal. I stood up. It is to me. I walked out before he could say anything else. My face burned with humiliation. But more than that, fury. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror in my cramped apartment bathroom. The light flickered above me. I stared at my face, my hands resting on the sink. The acne scars. The uneven brows. The nose I used to contour into submission. I had never wanted to be the prettiest girl in the room. I only ever wanted to be respected. And now I wasn't even employed. I took off my name badge with shaking fingers and dropped it in the trash. Somewhere between heartbreak and shame, something in me cracked open. The mirror didn't show a victim. It showed someone about to rise. Losing a job is like ripping duct tape off your skin, sudden, painful, and sticky with shame. You think it's about money at first. Rent, groceries, maybe your Netflix subscription. But it's more than that. It's the unraveling of your identity. For the first 2 weeks, I didn't tell anyone. Not my sister, not my mom. Not even my group chat, where memes reigned supreme. I couldn't bear the thought of seeing the message bubbles pop up with pity. So I woke up each morning, got dressed, and pretended. I'd walk to the local coffee shop with a tote bag full of resumes I never handed out. I'd sit at the farthest table and scroll through job listings that all wanted people who were polished, client-facing, well-presented. All code for, "Don't look like you've survived anything." One day, as I waited for my latte, I overheard two 20-somethings behind me chatting about a new facial mist that was life-changing. One of them, a girl with impossibly clear skin, said, "Honestly, it's not even about results. It just feels nice to do something that makes me feel like I matter." Something about that line punched me in the gut. Makes me feel like I matter. When was the last time I felt that? I went home that night and opened my bathroom cabinet. It was chaos in there. Half-used tubes, expired creams, products I bought chasing the illusion of worth. That's when the idea hit me, not as a business plan, but as a rebellion. What if skincare wasn't about fixing? What if it was about accepting? I pulled out a notebook and started scribbling names. Most of them were cringe. Glow Armor, Skinception, Raw Radiance. Then I wrote, Bear Kind. Bear Kind. Two words I rarely heard in the same sentence. A brand built on kindness, not perfection. I didn't have a lab, I didn't have funding, but I had time, a kitchen, and enough stubbornness to launch a small country. I began researching natural ingredients that helped my sensitive skin. Oat milk, chamomile, calendula, rosehip oil. I ordered small amounts from local wholesalers and started mixing basic formulas in mason jars. At night, I'd test them on myself. I documented everything: texture, scent, how it made me feel. Not just results, but rituals. My tiny apartment soon smelled like a botanical garden collided with a bakery. The next step? Packaging. I had no money for design software, so I downloaded a free trial of Canva and spent hours playing with fonts. I hand-labeled each jar with craft paper and a simple message, "You already glow. This is just a reminder." I listed them on Etsy, posted in a couple of clean beauty forums, and crossed my fingers. Nothing happened for a week. Then I got my first order. Sarah from Portland. She bought one jar of the oat milk cream and left a note that read, "I cried reading your product description. Thank you for making this." Two more orders followed that week, 10 the next, then 30. Suddenly, I was staying up until 2 a.m., hand-mixing batches, carefully pouring them into recyclable jars, wrapping each one in tissue paper like it was gold. It was messy, exhausting, beautiful. One night, I recorded a video on my cracked iPhone. In it, I stood barefaced in my kitchen, holding a jar of Bear Kind cream. My voice shook as I spoke. I was fired for not being pretty enough. So I made something for all of us who've ever felt invisible. You're not broken. You're not lacking. You're enough. And Bear Kind is just here to remind you. I almost didn't post it, but I did. And I went to bed expecting nothing. By morning, my world changed. Comments flooded in, not just from women, but men, teenagers, cancer survivors, burn victims, mothers, even a soldier stationed overseas who wrote, "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." That day, I ran out of jars. That week, I ran out of space. But something more important was filling up: my soul. Within 3 months, my living room had become a warehouse. There were shipping boxes stacked to the ceiling, bubble wrap tumbling out of laundry baskets, and a corner desk covered in dried chamomile petals. I stopped using my kitchen to cook. It was now my lab. My fridge held shea butter and jojoba oil instead of milk and eggs. My neighbors started noticing the parade of USPS trucks pulling up to the curb. One of them, an older woman named Dot, knocked on my door holding a tiny jar in her hand. "I think I got one of yours by mistake," she said, then added, "But I tried it anyway, and sweet mercy, it made my skin feel like satin. You got more?" Dot became my first unofficial brand ambassador. She told everyone in our building. One day, a teenager from 2 floors up shyly knocked and said, "My mom said you make magic cream." I gave her a sample. 2 days later, she left a thank you note in my mailbox that simply read, I didn't wear makeup to school today. That's a first. That note did more than any investor ever could. Soon, I had more orders than I could handle alone. That's when I called Priya, my best friend from college, a whip-smart woman with an MBA and a laugh that could shatter glass. Bearkind is blowing up, I told her over the phone. I need help. You need a miracle, she said, half joking. What's your fulfillment process right now? Uh, me. Girl. She flew in that weekend. Together, we built systems. Google Sheets turned into Shopify. Mason jars turned into glass containers with minimalist, eco-friendly labels. My website now had FAQs, a blog, and a mission statement that made people cry. Priya became my co-founder, my co-dreamer. We worked day and night. We fought over font choices and color palettes. We cried over late-night customer reviews and burnout. But most of all, we believed. By the 6-month mark, we had over 30,000 followers across platforms and were featured in a BuzzFeed article titled, "This Woman Turned Her Trauma into Skincare Gold." That article changed everything. Retailers started calling. Wellness bloggers started begging to collaborate. We even got a DM from a minor celebrity who asked, "Can I get a custom line?" We said no, that wasn't our mission. We weren't here to chase fame. We were here to make healing sacred and accessible. We launched new products, each one handcrafted with real stories in mind. The Scar Balm was inspired by a girl who messaged me about surviving a car crash. The Midnight Repair Oil was for new moms who hadn't slept in weeks. Every label had a different quote from customers we'd helped. That's when we were invited to the Beauty and Wellness Expo in Los Angeles, our first public appearance. It felt surreal walking into that massive convention center, surrounded by towering banners, massive booths with million-dollar branding, ring lights, influencers, and press. We had a single table, a small beige cloth, 2 folding chairs, our products displayed in tiny pyramid stacks. I felt like David among Goliaths. And then I saw him. Nathan. He was at a booth 2 rows down. Sleek signage, paid models, glitzy giveaways. He was launching a new line, some knockoff clean beauty product with artificial everything. His eyes locked with mine. For a second, I felt my lungs squeeze. But then, and this is the important part, I smiled. I held his gaze. Calm, unshaken. Then I turned back to a customer and said, "Hi there. Would you like to try a sample?" That moment was a turning point. We didn't win the biggest booth or the loudest applause, but we won hearts. Our line stretched around the corner. People left our booth hugging each other, crying, laughing. And on the final night, a journalist from Vogue came by. She asked about our story, so I told her the truth. Not with bitterness, but with grace. How I was fired. How I started from my kitchen. How people found healing in our jars. She was quiet for a long time after that. Then she said, "I think people are ready for beauty that doesn't make them feel broken first." A week later, the headline dropped. The skincare revolution that started with a pink slip. Meet Eliza Hart of Bearkind. Orders exploded. We hired staff, moved into a proper facility, partnered with sustainable growers. And that's when I got the invitation. Join us at the Summit Jet Collective, a celebration of female-led beauty brands. An ultra-exclusive event, a private jet party, only 10 founders invited. I RSP'd yes, and I bought an extra seat. For closure. The private jet gleamed on the runway like a dream stitched from stainless steel and sunlight. Its white and gold body caught every glimmer of the early morning rays. Luxury vehicles lined the tarmac like loyal pets, Bentleys, G-Wagons, Teslas. I had never felt so far from that girl crying in her bathroom 2 years ago. "Don't fidget," Priya whispered as we approached the stairs. "You're the CEO of a multi-million-dollar brand. Act like it." I tugged at the sleeve of my minimalist white jumpsuit. Sleek, strong, tailored to perfection. No frills, just power. We boarded the jet where hosts handed us personalized champagne flutes and called us Ms. Hart and Miss Kapoor. Inside, it felt like Versailles with wings. Gold-rimmed everything, velvet chairs, a cloud of neroli, and cedarwood from someone's $400 perfume. The other women were founders of brands I'd admired for years. Some had old money behind them. Others were influencers turned entrepreneurs. But every one of them had built something. I belonged here. I sipped sparkling water, scanned the room, and froze. He was there. Nathan. I recognized him instantly, though time had humbled him. He was slightly balder, slightly heavier, but still dressed like he expected the world to bow. He stood near the bar, talking to a group of investors. As soon as his eyes landed on me, his jaw slackened. For a second, I wondered if he'd even remember. But of course he did. He excused himself and crossed the room toward me, glass in hand. That same performative smile, like he was stepping into a networking event, not a reckoning. "Eliza," he said. My name in his mouth sounded foreign now. I didn't like it. "Nathan," I replied flatly. He glanced around. "Didn't expect to see you here? Wow. You look very polished." The compliment tasted like rust. I smiled, calm and slow. "Thank you. I didn't expect to see you here either. Thought you left the beauty world." "Well," he chuckled, "things didn't exactly go as planned. My last line folded. Supply chain issues, PR disasters. You know how it is." "Not really," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "I mean, I've heard Bearkind is doing well. Saw you in Vogue." "Oh?" I tilted my head. "Thought you weren't into non-traditional beauty brands." A flicker of discomfort crossed his face. He tried to recover. "Look, I've changed. If anything, I admire what you've built. You took something small and made it big." He said big like it was a miracle, like it couldn't possibly have come from someone like me. I felt a calm rise in my chest. No bitterness, no desire for revenge, just peace, and maybe a touch of poetry. Just then, one of the event coordinators approached. "Ms. Hart, they're ready for your spotlight moment." Nathan blinked. "You're presenting?" "She's not just presenting," Priya interjected, appearing beside me like a bossy guardian angel. "She's the keynote speaker." Nathan's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I turned to the coordinator. "Tell them I'll be right there?" As they walked off, I turned back to Nathan. "You fired me," I said, "because I didn't fit your aesthetic. You thought I'd disappear." He opened his mouth, maybe to defend himself. I held up a hand. "I'm not angry, not anymore. In fact, I'm grateful." His brow furrowed. I smiled. "If you hadn't slammed that door in my face, I'd still be giving 110% to someone who only saw me at 10. He looked stunned, speechless. "Enjoy the hors d'oeuvres," I said, turning away. The speech went viral, not because I cried, not because I shouted, but because I stood there, looked into the camera streaming to a global audience, and said, "I used to believe beauty was something you earned, through products, approval, and pain. Now I know it's something you protect, and build, and refuse to let the world strip away." When I walked off that jet 4 hours later, I didn't just feel powerful, I felt untouchable. And the man who fired me? He left the party early. 2 days after the jet event, my inbox caught fire. News outlets, podcast invites, international distributors. A surprise endorsement from an A-list actress who captioned her selfie with, "Bearkind helped me fall in love with my skin again." But the most unexpected email came from a familiar name, Nathan Weller. Subject: a conversation? The message was short, sterile. "Eliza, I've been thinking a lot about our encounter. I wanted to reach out and say I'm sorry, sincerely. I acted like a coward when you worked under me. You didn't deserve that. Would love to grab coffee, just talk." I stared at the screen, unblinking. Priya leaned over my shoulder. "You're not seriously considering replying, are you?" "No," I said calmly, "but I will respond." I typed a short reply. "Nathan, I appreciate the apology. Closure granted. Conversation unnecessary. Take care, Eliza Hart. I hit send and didn't think about him again. A few weeks later, we had our first Bearkind Summit, a retreat for survivors, dreamers, and healers. We booked a quiet eco-resort in Sedona and flew in 50 customers from across the country. Some of them had never been on a plane before. One woman had just finished chemo. A single father brought his teenage daughter who struggled with acne and bullying. Everyone came with stories, and they left with connection. On the second night, we hosted a bonfire circle. No cameras, no sales pitch, just voices in the dark, telling the truth. A woman named Candace stood up. Her hands trembled. "I got a scar on my face from my ex throwing a bottle at me," she said. "I used to hide from mirrors. Then I found Bearkind. I bought one jar, didn't even care what it did. I just needed to feel seen. That little note you included? Your skin tells your story, and your story is sacred?" She paused. Her voice cracked. "I pinned it to my mirror. I look at it every day, and I'm still here. That's all I came to say." The circle clapped. Some cried. Priya squeezed my hand. That night, as I stared up at the stars, I felt something shift. I wasn't just a business owner. I was a builder of bridges, across shame, across silence, across all the lies we've been told about what beauty is supposed to mean. The next 6 months flew by. Bearkind hit international markets. We hired our 50th employee. A book deal came through. We donated 20% of our profits to domestic violence shelters and teen mental health programs. And then came the invitation that brought everything full circle. "Eliza Hart, you're invited to host the Skywave Summer Gala on the Amalfi Coast." It was the event. The one all beauty elites and venture capitalists drooled over. Billionaires mingling with brand legends. Private yachts, helicopters, designer gowns, PR powerhouses. It wasn't just a party. It was a signal that you'd arrived. And I had. We chartered a private jet from LA to Naples. But this time, I wasn't a guest. I was the host. The gala was held at a cliff-top villa overlooking the water, glowing with candlelight and string quartets. The air smelled like jasmine and money. I wore a floor-length emerald gown with a slit high enough to whisper confidence, not scream for it. Gold heels, no contour, just soft skin and self-trust. Priya worked the guest list like a general. Our team floated between tables, handing out Bearkind hand serums packaged in satin ribbon. And then, halfway through the evening, I saw him. Nathan. Again. Apparently, he'd clawed his way into the invitation list through a shell company launch, still trying to matter, still looking for approval. But this time, he wasn't talking. He was sulking in a corner, drink untouched, watching as people lined up for selfies with me. It would have made a great movie scene. The villain humbled, the heroine triumphant, the camera panning out to violin music. But real life doesn't need dramatic lighting. Real power is quiet. So I walked past him, didn't flinch, didn't look. He wasn't part of my story anymore. He was a footnote, and I had chapters to write. It was early morning when I walked into the bathroom of my Amalfi villa, wrapped in a silk robe, barefoot on cool tile. The sea whispered outside the open balcony, sunlight ribboning through gauzy curtains. I stood before the mirror, bare-faced, freshly washed. No concealer, no illusion. Just me. The woman who had once been called not the right look. The woman who'd been quietly fired, discarded like yesterday's packaging. The woman who built an empire out of everything they said she wasn't. And yet I didn't feel like I'd won. This wasn't revenge. This was redemption. In the mirror, I traced the slight scar on my temple, a childhood fall. The sunspot near my jawline that darkened after stress and heartbreak. The lines at the corners of my eyes from too much laughter and too many 2 a.m. work nights. Not flaws. Not things to erase. Proof. I used to believe I had to make myself smaller to be accepted. Quieter. Smoother. Less difficult. But I had learned. Being digestible isn't the same as being respected. And looking beautiful, by someone else's standards, is a fast way to forget what you actually are. Now, beauty was no longer my currency. Impact was. The gala had ended with thunderous applause. Journalists called it a poetic reclaiming of the industry by the very voices it once silenced. But I didn't need headlines anymore. I needed moments. And they came, one by one. A note from a girl who said she used Bearkind before her first day of high school. Not because I wanted to be pretty, but because I wanted to feel brave. A picture from a trans man who said our scar balm helped him love his post-op body. A video of a grandmother and granddaughter applying moisturizer together, laughing, reading the quote under the lid aloud. This jar doesn't fix you, it just reminds you that you were never broken. I watched that video 10 times, maybe 20. That was the jet party that mattered. Weeks after the gala, I got an invitation to speak at a business school I once couldn't afford to apply to. Full circle moment. I was nervous, though. Young people are sharp. They can spot fake faster than any boardroom. I stepped up to the podium in front of 400 students and told them the truth. I was once fired because I didn't look the part. They said I wasn't the right fit, and I believed them, for a while. But then I stopped trying to fit into a mold that wasn't made for me. I made my own. There was silence, then applause. Not polite claps, not forced cheers. Applause from people who saw themselves in my story. Afterward, a student walked up. Acne, purple braids, braces. She said, I want to create a brand too, but I'm scared no one will take me seriously. I looked her in the eye and said, they won't, not at first. And then one day, they'll ask how you did it. She blinked. Her lip trembled. Then she smiled. I'll remember that. So would I. I went home that night. Home, not a villa, not a jet, to my small apartment with a fig tree by the window and a fridge filled with oat milk and leftovers. Priya called. We hit our 1 millionth order today, she said, and we just passed our 500th five-star review this month. I didn't scream. I just breathed it in. Like something sacred. Sometimes I still think about that first day, leaving the office with my dignity in a cardboard box. That woman? She didn't know what would come next. She just knew what she wouldn't settle for anymore. So if you ask me now what success looks like, it's not jets, it's not magazines, it's not Nathan watching from the sidelines. It's the way my customers write to me like we're old friends. The way my team celebrates every small win like it's the Super Bowl. The fact that I can look in the mirror and say, you were always enough, they just couldn't see it. And now, the whole world does. If this story resonates with you, hit the like button and leave your story in the comments section. And of course, subscribe to my channel for more real, raw, and ridiculous stories. Your support means everything to this channel.